All right, so let's get started. Hello, everyone. Hello, the people in the audience that are joining as you're tiptoeing in. Welcome. We're going to get started right away. Thank you for joining this fireside chat between hosted by the Tech Showcase and with Alethion's CEO, Roy, and Simba Chain co-founder and CEO, Ian. Hey, guys, welcome. And
thanks.
Thank you.
Roy is the CEO of Aletheon. I've known Roy for the past 2 years. Beforehand, he was the CEO of magniX, and we're going to be focusing today about Aletheon. Ian is was the CTO, now CTO and co-founder of Simba Chain, at least for the past 5 years. So I don't want to give a bad introduction, so I'd rather let Roy, how about you first introduce Aletheon, and let's kick it from there.
Sure. Aletheon is a software company based in Bellevue, Washington. We were started in early 2017 to solve 4 major problems we saw in industry. One is counterfeits and the growing number of counterfeits. The second is gray market, and you can kind of put both of them together as illegal activity with products. And unfortunately, we're seeing that in everything. When people think about fakes, they think about the fake Rolex or Louis Vuitton bag you buy on the corner in New York. But actually, we're talking about way more than that: counterfeit medicine, brake pads, weaponry, etc. And we started 2017 for those 2 problems. The third is misidentification that leads to human error. I have multiple items of the same thing. I'm about to install one of them, but I'm installing the wrong item because it looks like the right item. And then the fourth is simply track and trace. How do I know that I'm tracking and tracing my actual physical item versus just data around track and trace? So we were created to do that. Our founders have a lot of experience in optical AI and machine vision. They are the ones who founded initially the system that today the US Postal Service and multiple other countries use to manage the sorting, the automated sorting of mail using computer vision. Today we are, as I mentioned, based in Bellevue, and we work and focus on 5 key industries globally.
And Ian, tell us a little bit about Simba Chain.
Sure, yeah. So Simba was founded in 2017. Actually, I was a professor at University of Notre Dame, and a request came in from a local company called, Joel Neidig was the person who got in touch, and he wanted to go for a proposal with DARPA, and the kind of area was blockchain, and I hadn't really done much in blockchain at the time, but it was interesting, so I wrote a proposal, kind of learning about the technology, and that proposal got funded. The proposal was called Simba, which stood for something different, and we kicked that project off, and that project was really about secure messaging on a blockchain. And as we looked into the technology, we wanted to kind of stand up demos. It was just very difficult to kind of, learn about blockchain, integrate with it, stand up demos, a lot of kind of moving infrastructure. We were using Fabric at the time. But then we looked at Ethereum, and it was really kind of the same issues. It took a while for 3 of us, 2 very experienced programmers and myself, to look at Ethereum. It took us about 4 weeks really to understand how to operate in that infrastructure and do something kind of, which is production quality. So the premise of the company was really to make that simpler. So we formed the company. We created basically interfaces, REST interfaces to multiple different blockchains, and we created tooling to make it simple for companies to onboard in blockchain. And since then, we became more enterprise. So we support kind of authentication, all of these things that are needed within an enterprise. The industries we service right now, mostly government at this point, but we're making traction with SIs and partnerships, which is what we're going to talk about today with Aletheon.
So Aletheon and Simba announced a pretty big partnerships a few weeks back. You're now working together on what I understand is kind of a singular product. In brief, why did you kind of start cooperating and doing stuff together?
Yeah, if you think about kind of the problems that both of our companies are solving, they're very complementary to each other in that we at Alithyon focus on the physical item. Is this cell phone a real cell phone? That's one. Is it the cell phone I think it is, as opposed to it's a general Samsung in this case? Is this actually my cell phone, serialized to mine? And am I using it in the right place? Where is it? Where's the last person that saw it, et cetera? What we don't do is deal with the digital aspect of the data or the securing of that data. On the other hand, Simba does a phenomenal job using blockchain and NFT to secure and authenticate digital data. Imagine the use case that says, is this in fact a real product and is it my product? Is it in fact a real product and is it indeed a certified product? Alithyon can do the physical authentication and identification, saying this aircraft part, for example, is real, or this military device is real, or this Rolex is real. Simba comes in and says, and by the way, here's the real digital certificate that the FAA, for example, sent, or manufacturing, or ownership of that watch. So that's where the combination provides tremendous value to the customer.
So you're essentially able to say, one, is this real? Two, is this yours?
Yep, pretty much.
So kind of how long did you guys discuss it? Was it something that just came into mind? Was it like back and forth dancing, trying to figure out if this is a fit? What led to it?
I think it was a 10-minute conversation.
Yeah, it was pretty quick.
Between two of us. And it just, it became so obvious, right? I mean, the one thing we hear, it's not for everyone, but because some people only care about the digital part, and that's great. And so NFT blockchain helps them. Some people care about only the physical part, and that's great. We can work independently. But for those that want or require both the physical authentication and the digital, this was such a perfect and easy match to understand. Literally 10 minutes over coffee and it was done.
And
Okay.
also from the Simba side, we do a lot in supply chain, a lot of work for the government, and we're tracking kind of materials. We're putting together kind of like supply chains and things like that. But we don't have the capability to bind that to the digital. And Alithion's solution enables us to do that. So we can take a photo of a part in the DoD and register it, and they can understand, where that part is in the system as it goes around, through the different MRO processes or whatever. So it's kind of, it's a lot of synergy there.
So it brings me kind of to another question I'm interested in. Ray, you mentioned people think about the fake Rolex, and how big of an actual problem is it? Do people feel it on the day-to-day? Why should people care if the product works, or why should people care?
That's a really good question, and the answer is pretty scary. The problem of counterfeits and gray markets, just counterfeits and gray markets globally, is today estimated to be a little over $3 trillion a year. $3 trillion a year, estimated by the World Trade Organization and the International Chamber of Commerce as the losses from fake and gray market goods. Now, those goods aren't just the Rolex or the Louis Vuitton. In fact, that's a small portion of it. Medical devices, huge. Pharma, huge. The World Health Organization estimates that in the modern or advanced or Western world, whatever we want to call it, US, Western Europe, 10% of medicine sold is counterfeit. In the developing world, 30% of medicine sold is counterfeit. Now imagine going to the pharmacy 1 out of 10 times to pick up a prescription, it'll be fake. What does that mean from a day-to-day perspective on your health? We're not even talking about, things like fake brake pads that get into auto dealerships and being installed on your car. You go to a dealership, not, buying it somewhere on eBay or something like that, a used one or in the corner street. You go to a dealership and have brake pads installed, only to find out later, the hard way, that the brakes were fake. The box may have been real. The nice hologram sticker that tells you that's a real box of a brake pad was real, but what was inside wasn't. So this is a tremendous problem. I mean, and then it goes all the way through to the government. a few years ago, a US Air Force F-16 was coming into landing here in the United States. Engine cut, pilot ejected, because that's what you do when you have an incident towards landing. The ejection seat pushed him out just fine, but didn't open the parachute. Crushed him to the ground and killed the pilot. Young, whole life ahead of him with a wife, and it killed him. And what they found was, they won't say it out loud, but articles that have been written about this recently say that they suspect that the computer board, the chip on the ejection seat of a US Air Force F-16 responsible for opening the parachute was fake. Now imagine the depth of where this goes for day-to-day life.
Okay, well, that's pretty big.
Yeah.
Is it something that also in your experience that people need to be educated, or is that something like people just don't think about it?
But it's interesting. It depends on what people. People in the industry know about it, but we see kind of three groups, if you will, when you talk about understanding acknowledgement. One, the majority, when you talk about fakes, they think about Louis Vuitton and Rolex. Yeah, fake bag, fake movie, a fake DVD, one of those things that no one cares about because it's just money. What most people don't think about are the fake brake pads, the fake medicine, the fake pads used in a hospital in surgeries. There was a huge case not long ago with Johnson & Johnson that was made public, that they found this whole conspiracy and ring of criminals, organized crime in the United States, jointly with India, where expired Johnson & Johnson aspects of medical equipment that was used in brain surgeries across over 5,000 surgeries in the United States. Expired items were picked up illegally, sold or sent to India, where they were repackaged or in fact redated with counterfeit things, sold back to a company in the United States, who then sold it back to the very same hospitals that got rid of this expired product. And this was used in surgeries. And so people don't think about that aspect. And then when you talk to many of the companies, there's almost denial. Oh, we don't have a problem. Other people have a problem with counterfeits or gray market, but we don't, because we've engaged in the great use of stickers or barcodes or QR codes. And so there's either denial or acceptance that a percentage of products will be counterfeit.
Ian, how does traceability come into this play?
How does traceability? Well, so I mean, traceability is comes into this massively, because it's that provides the origin of the products as it goes through the supply chain. The nice thing about the solution that we've come up with, though, is in terms of the identification or authenticity, that is supplied at the manufacturing process, right? So the Alethian kind of authentication image that you take with a phone is kind of recorded at the beginning. So it doesn't really matter, if it's 20 tiers of supply chain. By the time it gets to the other side, you can authenticate, whether it's a supermarket or whatever, you can authenticate that item, whether it comes from that supplier or not. If it doesn't, if it authenticates, it's good. It's, it hasn't been hacked. If it doesn't, somewhere along that supply chain, it's been hacked. So you don't really need to monitor every kind of tier to be able to kind of detect whether something's counterfeit or not.
Imagine on the two cases before, you come to install that chip on the F-16 seat. You take a picture with your mobile phone, and it tells you this is in fact a real chip made by company X. Right. And then imagine there's a blockchain file with it, an NFT that says, and here is a certificate from the US Air Force or from the FAA or whoever it is that says, this is a certificate that goes with this part. Or here is a real pad with the actual date that was made by Johnson & Johnson. And here's the NFT that says, here's a certificate of manufacture from Johnson & Johnson approving it. It's hard to dispute that in any case. It's also almost impossible, I won't say impossible, but almost impossible to ever try and do counterfeit or gray market when you have that capability.
Right.
It almost fit. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to kind of outline, there's Roy gave some excellent examples of, counterfeits. One I wanted to outline, we've been working with a company in Mexico for about 3 or 4 years now, Tox. They're basically like a Denny's kind of a restaurant chain. They have about 200 outlets over Mexico. And we've been working with the coffee farmers in Tacana region, tracking the coffee and kind of by binding the physical attributes. We're not using sophisticated stuff like lithium, but we're basically recording kind of the weight and the humidity of the beans. We can track those all the way through the supply chain and know they got there intact because they have the same humidity and same weight when they arrive in Mexico City. But I wanted to outline Kona Coffee. Kona Coffee had a lawsuit 2 years ago. Apparently they produce 2.7 million pounds of coffee a year, but 20 million pounds of coffee is sold in the US every year. And there was a massive lawsuit to that effect. So basically 1 in 8 chance of getting a, authentic cup of Kona coffee, which is incredible, right?
So topping off that, you mentioned that somebody scanned a QR code on a box, but the bricks are fake. And then Ian, you're saying that, aren't you actually focused you're forcing the entire supply chain, every single person to go and authenticate their part. You're forcing everybody to go and kind of align with the standard that you're pitching.
You actually don't have to, but it's an advantage, right? So if you just imagine 2 scenarios. One, the most simplistic, the manufacturer of the item, wherever they are, register the item in our system by taking a picture. That's all they do. Take a picture of the item. Then the end user, the Air Force, the hospital, the consumer in the pharmacy, whoever it is, the person buying the watch in the store, whatever the product, can take another picture with their phone and tell them, yeah, this is in fact that item. That's the most simplistic, right? Start and end. But the sophisticated operators that want to know what's going on all the way in the middle, going back to traceability that Ian was talking about at a detail level, imagine that when that item goes out of the manufacturer onto the truck driver takes a picture with his phone. Yep, I just picked it up. It's real. They drop it off at the ship. At the ship, they take a picture. I just got it. It's real. And I have a stamp, an irrefutable stamp saying, I just got this, a digital stamp. It comes off the ship at the port. Take a picture. Goes into the truck, takes a picture. At some point, if there's any monkey business, quote unquote, going on, whoever authenticates it will suddenly get an error saying, hey, this isn't real. Now, if I did the sophisticated all the way through, now I know where that item was last seen authentic and where it was just found inauthentic or counterfeit or gray market. Maybe it's a real item, but the wrong item. Someone switched, right? A used one, a new one, a refurbished one, etc. Now I know exactly in my supply chain where to go find it versus I don't know, somewhere along the way it happened. So depending on the level of sophistication that the customer has, they can really dig down and use this for forensic analysis going backwards.
So why does it have to sit on blockchain? Why can't it be standard, like, here it is, next stop, all right, we got it, thanks, on to the next one?
You can, but when you're looking at things like government stuff, pharma, things that are regulated, and you really want to know that not only is the item the real item, but the data all around it is the real data, that's the perfect match. If you're doing maybe if you're tracking a Louis Vuitton bag, maybe you don't need it on the blockchain. Or maybe if you're doing just traceability of data, you don't need authentication of the physical item. But where both of those collide or mesh, if you will, are in highly regulated environments, or where the consequence of getting either the data or the product wrong is very high.
Okay.
Yeah, so in terms of kind of the blockchain piece, it's doing several things. And, like Roy said, depending on the customer, they, might want to implement those. In terms of the DoD, imagine kind of scenarios where you're using additive manufacturing to print parts at the, warfighter kind of at the edge, right? You're going to want to know that part that's been produced is authentic when you install it, 10 miles away, and the supply chain isn't infiltrated. So So there's some scenarios that it works, and that kind of level of I don't know, credibility or authenticity, kind of non-reputability is important. So just to kind of touch on the way the blockchain piece works, the NFT encapsulates kind of the feature print of the so Aletheian takes a photo of a part, creates a feature print, and that feature print is encapsulated into the NFT. It's not the feature print itself, it's a hash of it, but it's a deterministic mapping of it. So you know that, you know, whether the feature print has been hacked or not. So that's one level. So by the time you get to the kind of installation point, you can authenticate it. You know that it's authentic in terms of it matches, it hasn't been hacked, but you also know that that feature print hasn't been hacked as well. You know, in a kind of tactical edge scenario, when it's decentralized, you know, that's important because, you know, you don't know, there's a lot of moving parts, there's a lot of systems that can be hacked and so forth. So that's one kind of level. There's the second level, an NFT, you know, is used for various things, but the nice thing about an NFT is it's transferable, right? There's a standardized interface that kind of means that, you know, an NFT can move from one wallet to another in a standard way, and that kind of process is the same as the way cryptocurrency works, and that's never been hacked. So to transition, you know, a part that's been authenticated using Aletheian from one entity to another in an unhackable way, and you can guarantee none of that data has changed, you can do that. And you can transition from one wallet to another, even in a tactical edge scenario. So you know it's gone from, you know, the additive manufacturing place to the captain to the, you know, you can record all of that transition. And that transition, if it's on the blockchain, it's signed by every individual. So you know exactly where it's been, where it comes from. The complete provenance trail is authentic right to the point they install it. So there's that piece. There's also, you know, alongside that, when you create an NFT, you basically sign that transaction. So that the signature of that transaction points to the ownership, like Roy said earlier. So say Boeing made a wing, right? And they wanted to authenticate that. They would sign that NFT. So that means, right, it's authentic. That wing matches the kind of image that's created. It's also been signed by Boeing. We know it comes from Boeing. Nobody else has a wallet, you know, that's the same as Boeing. It's only them. So we know it comes from Boeing. And then we can transfer it. So Boeing can transfer it to the DoD in a transaction. So they're basically taking that receipt of ownership. So Boeing owns the wing initially. They transfer it to the DoD receives it and into the DoD's wallet. So there's complete kind of lineage of that flow until they want to use it. So that's a couple of kind of aspects. I'll go into a few more later, which are, you know, kind of like analogies, but like, let's go on with the questions for now.
So ever since COVID and people, everybody suddenly got surprised that the beginning of their supply chain was started in China or somewhere else in the East, and now everything is stuck. And it took cars for 5 years till they were able to get the port, and then they have to wait another 3 till they can actually get the car they bought. How actually is it actually possible to get authentication and traceability of the supply chain? I know from us at Deep Tech Showcase, we saw a lot of agencies talking about it. Is that actually doable, or is that just lip service that you have to say and then just keep on going with day to day?
So I would say it's absolutely doable if you do it right. If you put stickers on it or rely on paperwork, literal paperwork, transferring hands, then it's probably lip service, because the room for either error or wrong, you know, intentional things going on is just too big. But if you do it correctly, for example, like, lo and behold, what Simba and Aletheian are doing together, then you can in fact do it, because the two methodologies on each one individually and together bring an irrefutable way of doing it. We don't rely on any additives to the items to be able to say that's the real item. There's no hologram sticker that if you look at it, it says, oh, that must be real. Even though, for example, towards the Super Bowl here in the United States, over $200 million of fake NFL products were found with real NFL hologram stickers on them. That doesn't mean
how's that possible? Like I thought the
let's go see
stickers.
where those stickers are made, and then you'll find out, or at least the stickers look real enough. Anything, it's just like in the computer world, virus, antivirus. If you create a man-made antivirus, someone else can make a man-made virus to overcome it. It's that simple. If I can make a hologram sticker that doesn't allow counterfeits, someone will know how to make that sticker and thus how to counterfeit it. That's why when we created Alithyon, the focus was no additives. I don't want to touch the item. The item itself should be its registration. Just like, by the way, fingerprints. If anyone in the audience relies on badges to identify employees coming into a building and getting access to computers, etc., then you know when the employee forgets their badge, they're nobody. They're invisible. They can't get in the building. They can't open their computer. They can't do anything. Or they could give the badge to someone else, and that someone else could pretend to be them with full access. Or if it's, let's say, an RFID badge, you walk by them with a spoofer, you create your own RFID badge. So as long as you rely on an additive, the human being's at risk. But those places where they rely on fingerprints, biometrics, you can't really go wrong with that for the most part. They're connected to me. They're inherent to me. Even twins and triplets have different fingerprints. So it's not like I can send my twin brother, which I don't have, but to pretend I'm me if we're using fingerprints. If I was using a badge, you could. Fingerprints, no. So we took that same philosophy and said, if we can find a fingerprint on a product that is inherently different from any other, you've solved that problem of trying to rely on additives. And that's what we did. The same thing goes on the blockchain model, on the NFT. If we can find a way to secure the data that doesn't rely on any one code or any one technology, you've solved that problem as well. Put them together, no one can mess with your product or your data. And suddenly you have something that truly allows you to trace all the way from supplier, no matter where they are, all the way to your end destination. And in fact, what we're seeing, you spoke of COVID, ever since COVID and these troubles with supply chain, counterfeits and gray market activity has gone up dramatically. Why? When there's a shortage, guess what? Someone's going to try and fill it. And they're going to fill it with counterfeit or gray market items. That's what we've been seeing. There's high demand. Someone will fill that demand with counterfeit and gray market items. It's unfortunate, but it's happening. HIV medicine is being counterfeited. Condoms are being counterfeited. Imagine what that means when your teenage daughters and sons suddenly find out from their father, hey, did you know that condoms get counterfeited? You better check where they're made and where you bought them. And so these are things, you know, if you don't really pay attention to it, it's problematic and they can't be solved.
So
Definitely. Go ahead.
yeah, I was just going to add in terms of supplier to customer through the supply chain, and kind of the role blockchain plays, kind of using digital signatures as kind of like a mechanism to understand that. So a digital signature, we've used those in the past, right? All of us, right? So if I want to send a data set, right, to you, I send the data set as it is. I don't change it. I don't kind of, encrypt it or anything, right? I just send you the data set. But alongside the data set, I send you a signature. Now, a signature is a deterministic representation of the data set. It's actually a hash, right? Encrypted using my private key. So when you receive the data set, you can do two things. You can look up the digital signature, and you can use the public key to decrypt that initial encryption that I did. And that will tell you it came from me, right? It came from me and Taylor. Then the hash, right, is a mapping from the data to a small representation. You use the same algorithm, SHA or whatever, on the data set, and you reduce it to the same hash. You compare the hashes. If they're the same, it means that the data came from me and it hasn't been changed since I sent it to you. It's exactly the same for a supply chain. What we're doing here, we're creating digital signatures for real items, for physical items. And the way we're doing that is through an NFT. We're putting the digital signature in the NFT, and the hash of the NFT directly correlates with the feature print that Alethea is creating. So you have a deterministic mapping from the NFT to the physical item. And, it's working exactly the same way as digital signatures. So, which have never been, they're used all the time to transfer data, right?
So thank you. There's a question that came in from the audience, and I think after that we need to go and talk about a little bit why you talk about gray markets, and in a second I want us to talk about gray markets. What are they and why should they care? But somebody in the audience asked, in recent years, Navy discovered that it had a sub-tier supplier, not a first tier, that falsified the material test results of steel casting used in submarines. A single metallurgist reported false, but it's a long question, so bear with me. A single metallurgist reported false positive, refusing to conduct destructive sample tests at specified temperatures for over 30 years. How would or could this combo solution prevent this type of fraud? So on the spot, I'm putting you both on I'm cornering both of you. Is this solution possible, doable? How would it solve it?
Yeah, that's a tremendous story that came out. I remember reading about it. My brother is a submariner, served in the submarine. I think, wow, that's not good to be in a tube underwater and then find out that the metal of that tube maybe wasn't what it's supposed to be. Pretty scary.
Worse than condoms.
Yeah, maybe. I guess depends on who you are. But to that question, could it solve it? Many times, yes, but not always. And I'll give you an example. Let's say we're using this specific case. Depends on where this fraud takes place. If the end user and the government, all the way through the supplier, the sub-tier, the tier 2, tier 7 even, and there's a trust system in there that says, at some point, let's say you are the person, you're the metallurgist, and you're going to say, yep, I've tested this metal. Here's my signature and my certificate. So we will feature print that metal, let's say, that's being shipped. As in, we will literally take a picture of it and create a digital fingerprint of it locked in an NFT. And so now we have the feature print of each piece of metal being shipped, and each of them has a digital signature from that metallurgist saying, I've tested it, it's good to go. In that case, this wouldn't have solved that problem because the person doing the signature is committing fraud. So this isn't a silver bullet to solve all fraud and all lies and all problems. But that example is actually much more unique than the example of it's real metal or it's a real computer chip. Someone signed it, but along the way, someone opened the box or didn't even put it in the right box and swapped them out. So when it gets to the customer, they're actually getting a fake or a gray market chip with the signature that's on a certificate. That happens much more often. And in that case, both our technologies solve that irrefutably.
Okay. And also, Adam asked as a follow-up question, does the new combination require optical AI and blockchain? Do you require extra sets of skills? Do you need extra training from the people? Do you need the people in the chain to now get another 2 years of onboarding on this new type of verification or not?
So not only will they not need 2 years, they'll need about 10 minutes of training. So I'm actually, you may notice, in a hotel room. I'm in Geneva, meeting with various types of companies. This morning, we did a demonstration for one. And during the demonstration, literally, there's a reason I said 10 minutes. Within 10 minutes of them seeing me register and authenticate their items, their employees who had never seen this before sat in front of my system and started doing it on their own. Now, to take our system and now add the NFT is one more click saying mint, and that's it. This is so simple between the two groups and what it offers the customers. It's really, the employees were looking at it and said, is this it? So yeah, that's it, you're done. And you just keep doing it. So from that perspective, it is so simple. And that was a goal for both our companies, is to make this so simple to use that does not become a block.
Yeah, Simba's focus is really simplifying applications. So, we try and reduce stuff to the lowest common denominator. And in terms of the integration we've done with lithium, we've been mindful of how this is going to be used in practice and made it as simple as possible, really. The Navy use case is interesting. I was thinking about that a little bit. We've been talking to DoD customers about kind of MRO, maintenance repair and overhaul operations, and there parts are going into a facility getting repaired, but there's not really a paper trail of what has been done with the part and the verification of whether that's been done well. This problem here, and we've been talking to the DoD about this problem, and we're looking at using DIDs and verifiable credentials, which are a W3C spec, and using that system, which is very complementary to blockchain. We're thinking of using a lithium to identify the part, put it into an NFT, and then using DIDs and verifiable credentials to certify certain activities that have taken place. And not only certify that, they've overhauled a wing, for example, right? But have that checked and have the checking of that, work be inspected, and have the certificates, they're called CI, certificates put on the chain as well, showing that work has been done well. So in this case of this supplier, one thing that comes to mind is if there's a process that the work that's been done by this sub-tier supplier is kind of associated with the NFT that is associated with the item. You have the paper trail right there in full transparency. You could have somebody verify once in a while. They don't have to do it every time, right? They have to do it apparently once every 30 years in this use case, right? So if they verify that work was done well, and that comes across, no, that wasn't done well, that could be transacted on chain also, and you could run then analytics to see how many times that happened, and then you'd soon kind of figure out that this company was misbehaving. So that would be a way of kind of controlling that. But the kind of the key there is having the data in a form that you can do this stuff with, and that's kind of where the blockchain stuff comes in.
When I think about high consequence items, and they could be consequence in terms of safety or performance, like in the military, they could be consequence of safety and health, like medicine, but any high consequence item, be it healthcare, be it DOD, etc. And there's multi-tiers to the supply chain, which is very common in those types of organizations. If that organization, be it the DOD, be it the end pharmaceutical, if they were to require of all their suppliers, doesn't matter if it's tier 1 or a tier 12, to register their items with feature print, meaning to feature print them, take a picture of them throughout the chain, then things like something made in China suddenly shows up in F-35 and the US Air Force halts all F-35 development, doesn't exist anymore. Because every time someone authenticates it as it goes to the next supplier, they would get that answer, hey, this product is made in China. Whether that's good or bad, someone will make the decision. But now it's a fact. There's not, I didn't know it came from China because it was 12 tiers down. If you require that, it's done. When you're a pharmaceutical releasing pills in a bottle into the pharmacy, you can know that what you're shipping is authentic and yours, and the pharmacy getting it can, with a single picture of the cell phone, say, this is in fact coming from that pharmaceutical way down the chain. So that's really the goal here. If the companies and the organizations require this, and they should, because we're talking about high consequence of getting it wrong, if they require it, suddenly the element of counterfeits and gray market literally disappears. Fraud within the supply chain, we can't always solve. But if it's the cheating of moving of goods, that can be completely eliminated.
So this isn't an optimistic conversation. Our condoms are fakes, our drugs are fakes, our ejector seats are fake. When a company integrates this, is this just a prevention of bad things happening? I'm preventing from you getting sued. You're preventing a child safety seat flying off the car if there's a car accident, or is it a company using your solution? Do they actually have a bottom line improvement?
Yeah, so it's all of the above. So first of all, when you use a solution and you know that you can't have any more counterfeits or gray markets, then there's the qualitative aspect of your brand, your reputation is much more protected, right? That's the easiest first line. Then there's your customers, consumers, be them individuals or other organizations, are protected because the person or the group you sent your chip to will know that the chip is yours and not someone pretending to sell a chip that's yours. So your customers are not protected. Lives can be saved. Health can be health aspects or problems can be prevented. And so there are real aspects there. Then, of course, there is the bottom line of waste. What happens when you find that your goods that you're getting on your marketplace are counterfeit and now you have to destroy them? What does that do financially? What does that do environmentally? What's the cost to your brand? What happens when you have return fraud, which happens way too much with multiple, both retail, big box, and manufacturers? Someone buys something and then 2 days, an hour, a week later, returns it, but it doesn't really return what they bought. They return either a fake or they return a real item, but that's been used for 2 years now, and now they're returning it in the same box. You see that it's used, but you can't really prove anything. Imagine if you could just have an employee take a picture of it, and it'll tell you, that's not what we just delivered to you 2 days ago. It may be real, and I, in fact, know that it is, but I know that we sold it a year ago. You can eliminate all those aspects, and yes, that goes straight to the bottom line.
So Ian, go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, I was just going to kind of bring back the example of the Kona coffee, right? If Kona used this solution, they could know, right, that only their product is being supplied to consumers because that's being checked, right? Right now, $20 million worth of not their product is being sold to their customers, right? How do you think those customers feel? Do they think it's a great product? No, it's not. It's an inferior product. It's going to be a lot cheaper in terms of production. It's not going to come from Hawaii, for example. It's, there's many things there, and that's going to be very detrimental to their kind of business. And, they're not going to kind of increase production selling a bad product, right? So that infiltration is really doing a lot of damage to their business.
So can you guys kind of define gray market? It's a slur that we've been saying for the past 30 minutes.
So there's counterfeit and gray market. Counterfeit is basically a fake, right? Someone bad has made something to look like my product because they can get away with it. That's a fake. There's like no two sides to it. Gray market is, I think, even harder. Gray market is a real product, not fake. It's a real product being sold illegally. What does that mean? There's a few options to that. Imagine medicine that's expired. So there's a date on the box that said this was good until April 10th. Someone got a hold of that expired box, changed the date on the box, and now resells it. So all the anti-counterfeit solutions out there won't catch it because they'll say, this is a real box of medicine. The fact that now I'm being cheated by the different printed date on it, that's a different problem. So really, when you think about anti-counterfeit, you can't look at it standalone. You have to look at it in the question of, how can I be cheated? So the gray market is selling something that's expired, but now changing the date. Selling something that failed QA, putting a sticker, it passed QA somewhere along the line. So I go to the garbage, we'll use the extreme case. I pick up the things that the company threw out because they failed. And now I put a sticker of QA passed and I sell them. People think it's passed. Happens all the time. What's called midnight runs. Factory employees, if not the legitimate factory itself, will run another shift creating products. It happens in shoes, it happens in phones, it happens in a lot of items. They'll create real products just against company policy and in an illegal way, and then they'll sell them. Again, anti-counterfeit solutions won't find this problem because these are real items, the real material, the real factory actually made them, except they're illegal. When you feature print your items, you will catch that because the system will say, this may be real, but it's not approved by you. This is not one of yours. Now think backwards. you can again forensically say, I know who made those. I know where that came from now. And so gray market can be as simple as that. It can also be, by the way, even simpler. Companies select regions to sell their products in. Maybe some products, for example, as a motorcycle rider, myself and my son, we buy motorcycle helmets. In the United States, helmets have to be approved by the DOT. And those are specific helmets that companies make, for example, in Japan and sent to the US, and they go through those tests. But you can also buy the same model helmet in a different country that maybe didn't pass that test, because it's not required in that country. Imagine I go to a store and buy that helmet or buy it online. It has a DOT approved sticker on it, but it's actually a helmet, a real helmet, but from a different country, maybe lower quality. I wouldn't know. If it were feature printed by the manufacturer, let's say in Japan, if it came to me and I took a picture of it, it would say, this is a real product, but it's supposed to be sold in X country, in France. Why is it being sold in the US? So again, you solve safety, but also the company can know, why are my products being diverted to a different market that they're not supposed to be there? Because again, it impacts their brand, it impacts their bottom line on sales.
Now, what about two things that are on my mind on this? One, you talk about a lot of things that I buy as a consumer. I buy the pills, I buy the car seats, I buy the helmets. Is this something that just we should care about as consumer people and the big bad company that sells us fake or gray market stuff? And should the government interfere? Should the government care? Like so far it's been a lot of private sector use cases.
Those are just the examples because they're easy to understand. But in fact, anyone who makes a product should care, or anyone as any organization that uses a product should care. DOD doesn't use products. The servicemen and women use the products, right? That F-16 pilot used that F-16 and was killed by a fake chip. It's at the end of the day, it all goes back. So pharma, the same. We talked about the individual using the pill, but first there's the pharmacy who bought the boxes. And then there's the shipping company that brought them the boxes all the way back to the manufacturer, to the pharma, and then down to the supply chain. And so it's really about companies and companies caring for their customers, be it another company who's their customer or an end user.
Ian, your thoughts?
Not much to add on the gray market stuff. I mean, I guess one of the other scenarios is when a distributor kind of sells items, to companies, to countries that they're not supposed to, right? So they thereby undercutting kind of the prices in that country, and that's a kind of another issue because it's unfair competition, I guess, with the other, companies in that country. But anyway,
there was just a story about that on a specific computer chip manufacturer here in the US that sold its chips to a phone maker in China against the law, in the United States at least.
yeah.
And so, how do you really know? After the fact, maybe, but imagine in real time, you could know exactly where those items are.
Right.
What do you do? What do you do if you have, like, I understand the phone, I understand the pill. What do you have if you have a really large item? You talk about a wing, but like it's not like you can feature print a galaxy. So what about larger items?
But first of all, you can. Imagine a car. A car is a large item, but it's really made out of multiple small items. A wing is a large item, but it's made out of multiple small items. If it is a single large piece, let's take a car door. It's a single big aluminum part. I really have to feature print one part of it. For example, going back to using individual fingerprints, I fingerprint my hand. I don't have to fingerprint my head to know that the person with the finger is in fact the person that has the head, right? So the assumption is if it's one body, my fingerprint covers the entire body. Same thing if you take that door panel or a wing. If I take a piece of the wing and fingerprint it, or in our case, feature print it, it by definition defines everything that's connected to that wing as a single entity. If the wing is made out of 4 parts, I would say feature print all 4 and then link them together as a single wing. Then you have dual factor authentication. And with Simba, it's triple factor. So imagine I go now and I get this wing and install it on a plane. I can take a picture of each of the 4 parts, and the system will tell me, are each of those 4 real? Are each of those 4 legal, as in not gray market? And do they belong together? Maybe they're real parts, but someone did a swap and didn't record it. So I have a real part of the wing, except it's supposed to be on another wing. So why is there missing paperwork here? And later that creates havoc with the FAA or any authority or the military, etc. So you can link and embed feature prints into feature prints. So one part into an assembly, then you link the assembly together. The assembly in its packaging box, link the box together. Now imagine that the person who did the QA on that wing NFTs their certificate. Now you have the triple factor authentication, which is phenomenal. And I'll just make a comment. We use the term NFT. NFT has been used very poorly or has a poor reputation in the marketplace because of the, whatever it is, sleepy monkey, bored cat, 10-year-old child did something on a computer and now that's been NFTs and someone paid and then lost $100,000 on it. NFT as a product is not what we're talking about, both of us, right? We're talking about NFT as a phenomenal, irrefutable way to protect digital data. Just like the Lithion is a phenomenal, irrefutable way to protect physical items. Put them together, you have this triple factor authentication using the NFT as it should be used, protecting that data.
Yeah, again, you know, once this data is on chain using a single NFT, I mean, that goes into the world of kind of what happens after that and the relationships. In Simba, we're working on a solution right now that can connect, as Roy said, maybe we chatted about this, I'm not sure, but we're representing NFT relationships. You know, so you can have a wing that has a relationship with an NFT that represents the assembly of the wing and so forth. And you have this hierarchical structure that represents every piece of that kind of assembly and sub-assembly, and you can track it all, right? As one moves, everything moves. You know, you can represent all of that in very great detail. And, you know, feature prints of everything desirable, but if there's feature prints of a small proportion of that, we can cross correlate with the rest of the item. So there's kind of various ways of representing those larger structures.
So you get me thinking, what do you do in a situation where there's a lot of vendors? It's no longer one person making the thing. By third tier supplier, you're reaching thousands of companies, and then Jeff is actually asking on how do you actually get all the layers of the supply chain to participate. So thank you, Jeff, for making me sound smarter.
So, you know, in my mind, it's whoever holds the responsibility for delivering an authentic item should require that their suppliers do this. So if I'm, you know, my previous employer, if I'm the Boeing company and I'm delivering a Boeing aircraft to the government, let's say, I should require that my suppliers that go into that plane feature print the items. If I'm a pharma company, if I'm Teva, a pharma company, I should require that my suppliers feature print their items and that each quality assurance certificate, et cetera, is on the blockchain so that I know that when I put my brand on that product, I've actually checked all the way down and not hiding behind oh, well, that's 3 tiers down from me. I didn't know that they were doing this. There's no excuse for not knowing because you can know and you can know irrefutably. You just have to implement. The days of hiding behind multiple layers of supply chain should go away and we should not accept it. We shouldn't accept it as consumers. The government shouldn't accept it. Customers shouldn't accept it.
Okay.
This goes back to kind of what I said earlier. You know, you don't have to have the complete supply chain, you know, to kind of do a good job. Ideally, yes, right? Everybody should participate. But I was hanging out with some supply chain guys in the Air Force once, and they said, you know, one of the supply chains they kind of tracked down was 25 levels. That's a lot, right? But if if you could get buy-in from 4 or 5, you've got feature prints and NFTs of, you know, components within those structures. You've got something, you know, where some of that information comes from. So building, I think it's not all or nothing. You know, if you build this up step by step, you'll get there.
So, Ian, I know Simba recently did won a TechFi with the Air Force. I don't know if you can discuss about it or not. I'll put it another way. How do you folks see integration of your solution and your product in government and in consumer sectors in the next year or 2 years?
Yeah, it's StratFi. We're in the proposal submission phase. We've submitted the proposal. We're hearing back you know, in the next couple of weeks whether we've got that, but we're already having conversations with 2 or 3 entities in the DoD about doing trials with Alethea and NFTs, and one of those is what I mentioned earlier. So there's a big problem now. It's not about authentication. It's really about traceability. So having parts that go into kind of repair processes, they don't really have a way of kind of identifying the part that comes out is the part that came in and what has been done with that part along the journey. So having a feature print enables us to identify the part as it comes out, and using blockchain and these certificates, we can know exactly what's been done on that part. So you have kind of, you know, the whole trail of what's been done. And if something goes wrong with that part, you can go back in provenance and figure out where it came from.
And people are getting smarter about this, both as consumers and as people in organizations. There was recently an article in the New York Times about fake bags and how that works. Just today, one of our customers announced a program that we're working with them on for art. And so imagine an artist working really hard, creating this amazing art, selling it, but then someone else somewhere is creating something very similar, copying it and selling it as theirs. One, the artist doesn't get their money. The consumer is buying something that they think is real, but actually isn't. And these things go on and on, right? I think it was, I don't remember if it was Harvard or one of the top tier universities found out that one of the items in their library that they were touting as one of the original Galilei documents was found to be forged, counterfeit. They had no idea. Now, I don't think we can expect that Galilei could have feature printed his document back then. We weren't set up back then yet. But imagine if the next authenticator says, I've checked that this is in fact a real product, now feature prints it, as in takes a picture of it, one picture, NFTs his or her certificate as part of that authentication. Now, the next 100 years, if someone wants to make sure that what they have is authentic, they take a picture of it and tell them, this is authentic. Here's the person that authenticated it and put their stamp on it, and here's the path it went through. So what we're doing, what was announced today, for example, is with Brendan Murphy. It's a project called Fast Sneaks, and they're making art on sneakers. Sneakerheads, as they're known, collect sneakers and pay a lot of money for them. The challenge is the only way to authenticate sneakers up until today was with some sort of NFC tag or a printed sticker, which again has been proven not to work. There are lawsuits between shoe companies and marketplaces on real or fake shoes being sold, but having real additives. Fast Sneaks are feature printing each one of their shoes. Every time they sell a shoe, they take a picture of it. And they're the original manufacturer of that shoe. They take a picture of it. The customer now knows, I can take a picture of my shoe and know this is in fact the shoe that came from the artist and not something that looks like it. So it applies to multiple levels of marketplaces.
There's another kind of angle there with the NFT. So an NFT, when it's being transferred, can represent a secondary sale and commission back to the original kind of maker of the shoe.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting aspect, right? Because if you can implement that secondary sales, you know, artists will encourage secondary sales because they'll get a piece of every kind of time it you know, changes hands. So that's kind of very interesting area too.
Yeah, when the crypto market exploded and suddenly a bunch of entrepreneurs had a bunch of money or pretend money, the market for used watches, luxury watches, skyrocketed. Suddenly you couldn't find a used Rolex or Patek Philippe or Omega or any one of those luxury watches. You couldn't find one. And they were going for crazy prices. The amount of fraud, as in counterfeit watches being sold, was crazy. Why? How do you know? The original manufacturers will tell you that with the quality, we're not talking about the $50 fakes of a Rolex. We're talking about high-end fakes that will cost $500, $1,000, $2,000, a fake of a $50,000 watch. A lot of times, the people at the manufacturers can't tell until they completely take the watch apart, look at the insides of it, and then figure out, oh, there's something wrong here. But as a consumer, there's no way to know. And so the amount of money lost by people was tremendous. Imagine if they could just take a picture with their phone and it tells them, one, this is in fact a real watch. Two, this is in fact the real owner of the watch and he's permitted to sell it to you. That changes the world of used goods changing hands.
It might have been $50,000 then or in crypto, but it's probably 4,000 now.
Yeah.
So as kind of a last question to finish, what do you think are the industries that are suffering the most, or what are the most important industries for the combined solution and individually? Then are you targeting those or other industries you're choosing to focus on?
Yeah, so we're at Eliteon, we're targeting 5 key industries that we think are critical to have this solved and can be solved by this, both individually at Eliteon, but definitely by this joint solution with Simba. One is luxury goods and collectibles, right? We said it, if you're buying an expensive watch, new or used, a piece of art, etc., how do you know it's real? How do you know the person selling it to you is in fact the owner? The second is transportation. We talked about car parts and plane parts. It would be nice to know that the brakes installed on my car are real, that the airbag is real. It would be nice to know that the planes on the part have in fact been certified and not just with a piece of paper that's on some other shelf that may or may not be connected to it. The third, DoD, right? We talked about that. DoD and suppliers to DoD, critical aspect as well. Fourth is pharma and medical equipment, really important. And the last, precious metals, gold bars, etc., where there the challenge is less fake because you can check the chemical, whether it's real gold or not. It's really about illegal activity. Is the gold I'm getting, the jewelry I bought, made from gold that came from Russia that's illegal? Or did it come, for example, from the Congo or Rwanda where they use child slave labor to mine it and it's against the law? How do I avoid that? Feature printing the gold.
Yeah, I don't have much to add to that. I would love to see the DoD stuff happen because that, is life-changing, right? So.
Fantastic. Thank you everybody for joining. We went a little bit overboard, but I think it was worth it. We're going to be sending the recording afterwards. And if you're interested in reaching out to Ian or Roe or anybody there with questions, feel free to contact us at Deep Tech Showcase, or I know you can find Roe Gonzarski and Ian Taylor on LinkedIn, or search for Simba Chain and Eliteon. And hopefully one of those ways are going to lead you to a contact. If you're unable to reach out to them, talk to us. We'll forward you to their way. Thanks a lot, everybody. It was a great conversation. Look out for more events that are going to come out soon. And that's it. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.